Welcome to the Root Cause Revolution podcast with functional and integrative nurse nutritionist and energy medicine practitioner, Audrey Christie.
Hey friends, today we're talking about injury recovery. So I'm often asked a lot of times what to do about an acute injury recovery. So acute injury would be something like I did where you hurt your back doing CrossFit, or you fell and injured your hip, or you sprained your ankle, or whatever it may be. I get asked about what to do that a lot. I don't see acute things very often. Generally, if you roll your ankle, you need to go see a doctor, right? Because you need to go see a conventional medical doctor so that you can get x-rays and things that I don't order. And you might even need an orthopedic doctor. But there is still something to be said for taking a natural approach to reducing your inflammation, particularly for an acute injury. And then we talk always about how to reduce chronic inflammation, right? So really, recently I had hurt my back, and the doc said, I've never seen anyone get rid of their pain and inflammation so fast from such a severe injury. And I said, Doc, I'm good at what I do. I mean, hello. And so then in the next appointment, he said, so you wrote down the protocol you used, right? I'd be really interested to learn what you did. And I was like, yeah, Doc, I bet you would be interested. So, it's interesting. Most of what needs to be done is going to be a little bit different for each person. Absolutely. I mean, I could give you the list of what I did. I threw the kitchen sink at it because I do not have time to be down, but I wager that you don't either. So the basics that you're going to do are going to be to eat anti-inflammatory foods. You're going to take anti-inflammatory supplements like turmeric, like a good quality CBD, which I'll link my recommendation up in the show notes. But I used a strain-specific CBD oil so that I made sure I was actively reducing my inflammation with that. I took turmeric. A lot of people make the mistake of not taking enough turmeric. I took 5 grams of turmeric a day. I took very, very heavy into smoothies and salads and all the things that I knew would reduce the inflammation greatly. I did a lot of movement, the prescribed movement that my doctor suggested, as well as my own yoga and stretching. And then I used topical analgesics. So I used a blend of essential oils to apply topically to my back. I did not use heat. I did use some ice. But one thing that I can recommend to everyone who has an acute, so, a short-term physical injury, I don't care if you broke a bone, if you tore a ligament, or what the cause may be, or even the quote-unquote diagnosis, the one thing I can recommend to every single person for injury recovery is PEMF. So, this post isn't sponsored by podcast isn't sponsored by a PEMF company. Maybe it should be. Hello. But let's talk a little bit about PEMF therapy and what it can do for you. So we got our PEMF machine originally because one of our horses injured himself. And I mentioned to the vet, hey doc, I was doing some research. This is what I really think would help him. And doc said, I've had a lot of cases actually where PEMF has worked. I don't have a machine myself, but I have a lot of patients who have machines. And I was like, awesome. I was like, I'm going to buy one. So I did. If you don't know, I care for my horses like they're my children, right? I'll do anything for them. So I invested in this little bitty PEMF machine. Well, then I had some additional training in osteopathic medicine for equine. And the lady that came out and did the training said that my PEMF machine is not good enough. It doesn't work well enough. It's not enough to do much for the horses. And I was like, really? Because it really, really worked well on this horse. And I've used it some for me, and it seems to work some for me when I have little aches or pains, or, if I've lifted, 25 bags, 50-pound bags of feed that day and I'm a little sore. And she said, no, it won't work. You have to have this kind. And she wheels out this huge PEMF machine on wheels in a case. It's got to plug into a 220-volt outlet, which is one of those like big ones, like your dryer plugs into. And she said, you have to have one like this for it to do any good. And so she used it on my horse, and it had an impact, obviously. But and I'll tell you a little bit about the differences. And I thought, you know what? That's the weirdest thing. So she gives me a card to the dealer, and then I go to call that dealer, and that PEMF machine is about $12,000. Then I spent some money on mine, not a ton of money, but like enough for an experiment, right? And so I thought, I am definitely not spending $12,000 on one of these things. Now, let's talk a little bit about what it is and why I believe the one that I bought, and the one I'll give you the information for on the show notes page at audreychristie.com/231, is better than the big $5,000, $10,000, $12,000 machines, particularly for what we're using it for here. So let's start with, what is PEMF therapy? It's a painless, let's go with that, and safe treatment for healing injuries. It can heal chronic injuries, right? But what we're talking about today is acute injuries. And so it's used to treat a wide range of health issues. There's been lots and lots of studies that show the benefits of this therapy. Essentially, it is electromagnetic pulses that enhance blood circulation, reduce swelling, soothe pain, repair bones. It's long been used as a bone repair. You might have heard it called a bone stem machine. Muscles, helps to repair muscles and tissues. And all of these impact injury recovery. So, like I said, anyone can fall prey to injuries. I tend to not be very injury prone, but it seems like here over the last 2 years, I've had a couple injuries, one my shoulder and two my back. But you can get injured at home, at work, on the road, playing sports, walking from the house to your car. My shoulder was a roll down door that I didn't let slam. I tried to prevent it from slamming down, and it just jerked my shoulder. Most common forms of injuries treated with PEMF therapy are muscular or tissue or bone breakage, okay? And so commonly, right, you go to the doctor, they're like, take some ibuprofen, or they might give you a prescription, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medication. They might give you painkillers. But there's a much more innovative way to deal with the pain, and that is PEMF therapy. Like I said, it's painless. It stands for pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. So PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. So you might think, well, Audrey, is this another Band-Aid? And actually, no, it's not. So usually if you have an injury, you have swelling and inflammation, and that tends to decrease the optimum supply of blood, which decreases the supply of nutrients and oxygen to the damaged cells. Some people use ice, and I'm a fan of ice, to get rid of swelling. However, ice doesn't do anything for the internal injury. It only reduces the outward symptoms of inflammation. So these tiny electromagnetic pulses actually get deep in your cells and treat the root cause issue for the swelling. Not to mention, it also, of course, reduces pain. It soothes the pain receptors in your brain for instant relief. So no drowsiness, none of that stuff. It's instant relief, which one of the reasons why I recommend the one I did. Now, when I bought it because I could take it out to a pasture and use it on an animal without having to have it plugged in. You can, of course, plug it in, but it also can work on batteries. But another benefit of that is if during my back pain, when I was injured and I had to drive 45 minutes into the doctor, I could take it with me in the car, which was where I had the most trouble. So when you use something like PEMF, instead of just masking the symptoms with painkillers and anti-inflammatory medication, which often leads to not only all of the unintended side effects that we've talked about over the years for all of those medications, including steroids, but it also just masks the pain, masks the inflammation, which can lead to further injury, especially if it's something like back pain or shoulder pain, whether it be acute or chronic. So the electromagnetic pulses actually stimulate ATP, which is responsible for providing energy to a cell. So when a muscle becomes weak, the amount of ATP in the muscle decreases. Now you've heard of me talk of ATP before, as in mitochondrial health. That's part of how your body gets energy. And, intense workouts also cause muscles to lose ATP, but you can regain ATP from optimal rest, optimal nutrients. When your body gets injured, its ability to compensate for that ATP decreases. And so the electromagnetic pulses ensure the production of ATP is available. It's increased to revitalize your cells. It also enhances the amount of oxygen that is supplied to the muscles, and oxygenation encourages healing and the performance of a muscle. All of this actually allows for the complete remodeling of the injury very, very quickly. Now, although it does help just by itself, it doesn't work in a vacuum. You do have to do other things in order to help. So I'm not suggesting that you use a portable PEMF device for your pain and injury alone in a vacuum. You have to do other things. Just like a chronic issue is a tree with many roots, an acute issue is a tree with many roots. For me, having the back injury, I thought, okay, I did my clean and jerks. I go to CrossFit. I did my clean and jerks incorrectly during a Metcon, which is the workout part. And you do it like really fast, or as fast as you can. It's usually for time. And so I did it really fast, and I lost my technique somewhere in the however many reps I did that day. And so that was the cause of my injury, period. Well, no, the cause of my injury was a number of different roots that led to, one of which was poor technique. By I got fatigued and I lost my technique. The other one was the build of my spine in general. I have slight lordosis. The other thing was that despite having taken and taught and practiced yoga for, I think we added this up once, close to at least the last 20 years, if not a little bit longer. It could be creeping up into 23 or 24 years now. The way that I was taught to do a lot of those techniques was incorrect. The way that I was taught to heavy lift weights in high school, and the last time I was an athlete, aside from myself, an at-home athlete, if you will, they weren't proper form. And so there turned out to be a hip flexor issue on one side that stemmed from a ankle ligament tear that I had in 1997-ish, six-ish, maybe even 95. And that caused a hip flexor issue, which then caused me to fatigue on clean and jerk and compensate with the left side of my spine, which after doing that over and over and over again caused me to have a stress fracture in the left L4, L5 region. All of that to say, it was a tree with many roots, right? A tree with many, many roots. And so what we do to fix that, now that I was able to quickly and easily remove that pain and inflammation and the muscle spasm with the use of a PEMF device, now we focus on strengthening the core, which was a little weak in some of the deep transverse abdominal muscles, strengthening and healing that hip flexor, strengthening and adding additional mobility to my left ankle from a 25-year-old injury, right? So just like you can address the root causes internally and energetically, you can also do this physically. And the whole point of this entire episode is to give you an option outside of pain medication, outside of NSAIDs, an option that you can use over and over and over again. And as long as you have a fresh battery or a USB plug-in thing like you do for your phone, then you have access to pain relief, constant pain relief. I have patients that sleep with them on even. And if you're local to me and you're having these kind of troubles, then I have a great sports medicine guy for you who is like-minded in the natural ways of doing things. So head over to the show notes, audreychristie.com/231. You can get the information on the PEMF device that I use and recommend. Last time I checked, when I bought it. I think it was less than $300. But you can get that device, the link to that device, the link to the strain-specific CBD oil selection. If you have a question about that, please, please, please let me know. Good CBD oil is not cheap, and cheap CBD oil is not good. So if you want CBD for a specific thing, I can recommend the strain. I work with that company a lot. I can recommend the exact strain that you will need for that. So you're not wasting your money on trying a bunch of different ones, if you will. And you can also find the detox, which is one thing that you'll need to do if you have an acute injury. You're going to need to reduce the inflammation in your body. A liver detox is the fastest way to do that. You can find a link to that also on the show notes page. As always, thank you so much for listening. I am always rooting for you. I will see you on Friday for Ask Audrey Friday. We've got some really good questions. See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Root Cause Revolution podcast. Be sure and subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated.